Hay clásicos del cine que se volvieron clásicos justamente por el amor al arte que tienen incluido en su proceso de rodaje. Así fue la historia de cómo se hizo este clásico de 1989 llamado Querida, encogí a los niños.
We now return to Mira Akien and Contre with our latest interview.
By today's technology, I'd say that more than half of it will be digitally created.
I haven't seen him since I left this morning.
It shrunk the kids.
Nick, what happened?
It works.
First director who wrote the original script became sick. And the doctor said, well, you got to go home. You're really sick. So he had a heart problem. And he went home, and Tom brought in Joe Johnson, who had never directed a film, but he had a lot of experiences with the Star Wars series. And in fact, George Lucas thought that Joe would be a great director someday. And so this was his first film. When he was brought in, he changed the script a lot. And because of his experiences in the visual effects and the impact of this overscale, underscale model, he really knew how to create an interesting story. And the story improved a lot.
Pork, what's gotten into you?
I think he just misses the kids.
It was a quite exciting film. I've never done a heavily visually oriented movies like this, but it was fun to work with. And lighting was required a lot of thinking. Disney Studio made a comment that it looked too scary for kids. You have to brighten up. And I wasn't too happy about it, but I tried to put more fill light, so things looked a little bit more like a children's book. Later on, well, maybe halfway through, Disney became wise, and then they sent me a comment that, why don't you go back to the original lighting? It's okay to be a little scary. So having worked on a lot of a natural film, I thought, once the audience gets the idea, you really don't have to show everything.
Yeah.
Some area of this frame could be dark and more suggestive than just showing everything. So that was the approach I took.
Yeah.
So when I see the movie, the first couple of weeks of shooting it looks the best to me. Then things gets brighter and brighter, and then eventually sort of go back to what I thought the image should look like.
So there's the two ideas of illumination are mixed together in the film, the darker and the brighter.
Yes.
Walt Disney Pictures presents The Last Frontier.
Dad can fix us, right, Nick?
Most of the grass set was overscale set. I mean, it was a gigantic set. The sets were huge, as you can see. I mean, gigantic grass sets. And the problem I saw with the grass sets was that they were so heavy. Everything was made of fiberglass, and they didn't move, so they didn't look convincing.
Yeah.
So we asked special effects people to attach cables, and some would just move slightly, just a little bit.
Just gotta keep our eyes open.
They're taking matters into their own hands.
I say that ant is ours!
Some images were superimposed against miniature scale backgrounds, so that the grasses looked, a little bigger than we had. ILM people built robots, or we used to call it mechanical ants, like really elaborate mechanical ants, and technically it was impossible to shoot the whole body, because part of ants were like a puppet, or there would be puppeteers, below the outside the frame, and they would be manipulating legs, and like a dozen people were operating one ant. So if you analyze it, there are a lot of tricky angles and tricky framing, so to hide these puppeteers. In some area, the ants were actually miniature, I think. They built the smaller version of it and then juxtaposed against the real actual size footage and they composed. The scorpion was actually, that part was completely stop motion animation. The single frame scorpions, those are puppets actually, and the foreground and background images were composited, so they look like they were in a same shot with the kids. But when we were shooting in the studio, we never saw scorpions. We just assumed. Bees were actually built. The bees, a lot of images were shot against the green screen.
Yeah.
That was a special unit that the kids were not kids. Just one boy was actually riding on overscale bees, and shot against the green screen, not green screen, blue screen in those days. The raindrop was computer graphics, but the raindrop bursting on the ground was an actual physical effect. It's pretty amazing. I mean, they've exploded this liquid, put it in the funnel-like container, and with air explosion, they blasted, and it was quite scary, but time consuming by today's standard. And a lot of these shots would be today would be digitally created.
Rick Moranis is Professor Wayne Zielinski.
Rick was quite easy to work with, and he even did some of the stunt work. I don't know if you remember the scene where he's kind of suspended over the grass, and that was all him. He did everything, and quite acrobatic.